So this is the latest and greatest TrueCut Light edition from AM.CO.za. So before we get into this amazing design, let us go and pay Riley a visit to see how his prototype has been doing and compare it to what this machine has to offer.
So Cody, here we've got our prototype 600 by 400 laser. What this laser can do is it can drop down 20 centimeters down into its bed, so you can put larger items in to engrave it. You can cut, engrave, and on that you can cut through ABS plastic, MDF wood, other natural woods. You can engrave on perspex, glass, stone, ceramic, wood, the list goes on.
What do you think cutting this will do for me for today?
So what I've done today is I've prepared a little coaster to engrave. It's a skull, and what this shows is the fine detail of the coaster for the engraving, and the fact that we can cut cleanly through 3mm MDF, which is something that people love to see.
So on your screen there, I've also noticed that it is showing me the actual skull.
Yes.
Is this going to show me in real time what it is cutting and what it is not cutting?
Yes, it will actually. It'll show you a line that goes back and forth, as well as a real-time time lapse of how long or how far you are into your job. So you can see I'm 20% in, or I'm 60 or 90%.
So let's assume now I have a large piece of work.
Yeah.
Would it give me an estimate of how long that work would take?
Unfortunately not. I refer to those little things that you ask me as a gimmick. A time period of how long something's going to take will always differ depending on what you're cutting and what you're engraving. So for instance, like this coaster, if it's very fine detail, it'll take longer. The more you have to engrave on the surface, the longer it's going to take. You can also speed up the process by choosing the distance between each line engraved. So if you want a less detailed piece engraved, but you need more speed, so you up that measurement of the gap between each engraving. So right now this is engraving at 0.3 of a millimeter, and what I would recommend is to going up to 0.5. I wouldn't go any further than that, otherwise you end up getting literally like lines that you have gaps in between. It looks just terrible.
But I didn't want to know as well, okay? Based on everything you've said now, with something with fine detail, all right, preventing burn marks.
Burn marks, the easiest way to prevent that is by applying masking tape to the surface before you engrave or cut. And that will take away any burn marks, because the burn now is on top of the masking tape. It's not actually on the wood. But when you're doing wood, I wouldn't worry about it, because most of the time you're going to clean it off and varnish it.
Yeah.
So it only matters when you're doing perspex or glass. If you're doing perspex or glass, you need to have the protective layer on top, which perspex does come with. So this will prevent any burning from happening. Or if laser is cutting through perspex, what happens is it'll go straight through, it'll hit the honeycomb bed, and it will reflect back onto this, and you'll end up getting like little chips or cracks. And that is caused by not having protection on the back as well. So if you want to have this engraved and cut perfectly, you need to leave on its protection on both sides.
Is there an overriding rule on how deep you should engrave on things before it actually becomes breakable?
If your item is 3mm thick, you need to only engrave 1 mil deep. You cannot go 2 mils, otherwise you will go halfway through and it'll just break.
Our machine here is an 80-watt one, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So by all means that means you can cut 8 mils deep, correct?
No.
In a sense.
No, unfortunately not.
Okay. So how
Simply because you cannot use your tube at 100% power. If you do that, you shorten the lifespan and you damage it. So when someone wants to cut that thick or that deep, I recommend upgrading the wattage, which you can do, obviously taking this off and giving yourself a bigger power supply, allowing more room for the tube to actually sit. If you really want to cut through 8 mils deep, you shouldn't be using this laser, you should be using a cabinet laser. It's more industrial and can handle that sort of thickness. This is a DIY desktop laser for people at home or small businesses. But when I'm getting an 8mm piece of wood, if it's natural wood, you got to keep in mind that all the natural pieces of the hardwood and the soft wood will change the difference in engraving. So instead of being a flat engraving, you've now got this rigid bump because of the natural wood.
So over there, that's what you're referring to.
All the higher pieces in this wood is because those are where the wood is at its hardest. And the deeper engraving is where the wood is soft. So when someone says to me they want to cut through 8mm, if it's going to be MDF, you can do it obviously multiple cuts, like 1, 2, 3, 4, then eventually you'll get through it.
As you know, you deal with plenty of customers in that.
Yeah.
And let's say your big machine is finished, or I just have the small machine, all right? With engraving on it, wouldn't it also be suitable to use something like this and do it in smaller rounds?
Engraving, you can use any power supply or any watt tube, because invariably if you're going to be engraving like this, was an engraving at 50% power, at 130 watts. So I can take my 80 watts and do it at 70% or 75% power, and I'll get the same result. I'll still have those ridges, but I'll get the same depth. So engraving on different surfaces and thicknesses is not an issue depending on what size you have. So for a desktop laser to cut or to engrave on a really thick piece of wood isn't the problem. The problem being is that you need to make sure you've got enough power for the cutting. So if I'm cutting thick wood, the desktop laser is not the solution. The cabinet is. But if I'm just engraving, then this is your friend.
Obviously with cutting, something with such fine detail as this, would you say this machine is definitely up to the challenge, or would you prefer a more industrial grade machine?
So to answer your question about that level of detail, if you want high detail with small items for engraving, not cutting, the desktop laser is the perfect solution, because the smaller the watt size for your tube, the finer your engraving laser, the size of it is. So if I've got an 80 watt tube versus 150 watts, the 150 watt tube will produce a thicker beam, which means you've got less detail. Whereas the 80 watt has a much smaller laser and beam, so that means you can engrave smaller things, you can do the rubber stamps without having any issues, you can do really, really small work.
Last question. Obviously we can see what's happening in real time here. However, if our piece is to adjust and veer off, can we stop it and then adjust our piece before it completely ruins our workpiece?
Very good question, Cody. So there's two parts to this answer. First part is yes, you definitely can pause it and you can adjust your material. You've got up to, as far as I know, 5 minutes before the job continues or cancels. I've never gone that far to test because I've always had enough time to move it to where it needs to be. You know, 5 minutes is a lot of time to readjust a piece of artwork. So pausing it is not a problem and continuing is not a problem. Another really nice feature about this machine with its upgraded panel is if I somehow lose power because of the situation we have in South Africa, where the power can disappear at any time, it will remember its position as well as its job until the machine switches back on again. And once the machine's back on, you have a choice to either cancel the job or continue from when it stopped. So if it was 70% in or 10% in and the power cuts, just have a really nice happy feeling in your head that once the power comes back on, I just push start and it can carry on going.
Well, thank you so much for this demonstration, Riley. I'd like to invite you back to our warehouse so we can show you the new version that has just landed.
Well, thank you, Cody. Thank you for coming here. And also have really, really great questions. And I really do enjoy answering them because there's a lot of people out there that like to know about these machines. And I'm looking forward to seeing the new one because after playing with the demo here, I would love to see what the final product is.
Well, let's head back to our warehouse and see what our new machine has for us. Hi Riley, welcome back. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you, Cody. Nice to see you too.
As you know, last time we were discussing your prototype unit, so I want to show you the big boss now. So this is our new version and we call it the Light Edition. Not only is it light on price, but it is also light on energy consumption.
Okay, so tell me, Cody, what about this laser cutter, the new one, is different to my prototype?
So one of our main differences is we have a display glass over here, which you can see if your tube is still operating. Our second one is we're now using tempered perspex on the glass display as well, so you can see with relative safety. We also have a major difference over here, which you just clamp this lovely piece off here, which allows you to put in longer pieces of work when using it. So in essence, you can turn your 600 by 400 machine into a 600 by a meter machine. So another cool feature that also helps in consuming less energy is we've replaced our magnet limiters with these plastic limiters, which allows our X-axis to stop where it needs to go every time. However, our Y-axis still use the micro switches.
Well, thanks, Cody. Off the bat, I want to say a few things that I've seen different about this laser compared to my prototype. I want to first point out the control panel. I see that it's got a number keypad on it. It's got quite a few more buttons, and I see the screen is also quite bigger in size compared to my prototype. Another thing I see is it's got its main trip switch on the front, which is quite nice instead of having it around the back. And I also see a permanent plug-in point for our rotary, which is quite nice as well. On the prototype, I had to access it through the control panel, so seeing it in the front now is going to make it a lot easier for customers to access and use it on a daily basis. And I see we've also gone from the prototype not having any buttons or switches for your air pump, the chiller and any of that, and I can see it's now on the top with an emergency shut-off button, which the prototype didn't have. So I quite like that. I love being able to switch things on and off as I need to in case there's something that goes wrong. So that is quite a nice little feature I see there. And as of course on all laser machines, I like being able to access everywhere around the machine. You know, if you drop something by mistake when you're cutting something, a job, and it falls through and you actually can't get to it, it's quite a pain. So I must say that is quite something I like. Apparently this machine comes standard with an 80 watts. What other tubes can I put into it?
Should you feel the need to adjust, or you want to do something, I don't know, work that's not as grand, you can still change and adjust your tubes in accordance to what you need.
Okay. And if you change the tube, will you need to also change the power pack? Because there's a lot of questions that people ask.
So the power pack is not vindictive of what tube you're using if it's less. If it's more, you will need to change out your power supply, obviously, then, as you cannot run a 100-watt tube off a 90-watt power supply.
Thank you, Cody. And that makes sense. I understand that. And a lot of people do ask that question to myself. And I always give them the same answer, same as you done. And it's nice to see that this comes standard with an 80 watts. An 80 watt is a very versatile tube, allows you to do a lot of things. And I do see that there is an expansion slot on the right hand side of your laser that you can prepare yourself for bigger tubes if need be.
Well, that's all part and parcel of the package that we're now offering. So as you see, our new one, I mean, as you know, you've had the prototype running through with all of those amazing things and doing those amazing projects. We're hoping that the light version will definitely be the answer to everybody's needs.
Last question, Cody. On my prototype, I had my up and down switch for my bed here. I see it's no longer there, so where is it?
Definitely. They've actually been moved over to the side for ease and convenience. I mean, you want to obviously be able to move the stuff out. You can actually come and have a look. You want to be able to move it while you're still looking at your piece.
Well, it's nice to see that they're on the side and not actually in the machine, and the buttons are quite nice and sturdy. That's nice to have instead of your switch.
Well, thank you so much, Riley, for coming through and witnessing what our new TrueCut light can do. As you know, you've been using our prototype unit, so I really hope that this TrueCut will be the answer to all your needs. Thank you once again. Thank you so much for watching this video on our new TrueCut Light 600 by 400 AM.CO.za machine.
At AM.CO.za, we have always taken pride in our products and customer service. Our Google rating represents our commitment to providing our clients with the best support possible. We have officially achieved a rating of 4.9 stars and an astounding 699 reviews for our Jet Park branch in Johannesburg at the end of 2020. Hlobosile Kumalo, a level 6 local guide who has 64 reviews all over the country, says, "The tech support team is on point. I had an issue with my machine, I called them and they said I must bring it in. The person who helped me checked everything and made sure everything was 100%. Kind staff members helped me load my machine in and out of my car." This was just one of the many appreciative reviews we have received. These tags mean a lot to us. Thank you so much for your support. Let's move our attention to our branch in Montague Gardens of Cape Town, where we have achieved a rating of 4.8 stars and an amazing 299 reviews. Level 7 reviewer Dash Somolu, who has 119 reviews on Google, says, "Great company, great products and very well priced items. The training we received from Messias Chunga was top notch. He was very knowledgeable and knows his stuff." Another satisfied customer amongst many. We would like to thank you, our loyal customers. Thank you, South Africa. AM.CO.za. Achievement matters.